I'm going to tell you something today that's going to make you uncomfortable, and I need you to understand right now that I don't care. I'm 80 years old. I've buried 2 husbands, survived a system that was built to grind my bones into fertilizer for other people's gardens. And last Wednesday, at exactly 11 in the morning, I walked into a bank in downtown Atlanta, and I dismantled the single most dangerous lie I had ever allowed into my life. I closed a joint account, 7 figures, 15 years of my son's name sitting next to mine like a parasite dressed in a suit. I moved every cent into a private fund, so far from his reach, he'd need a passport and a prayer to even smell it. And before I tell you why, before I walk you through every rotten detail, I need you to hear this. There is one mistake I made, one that almost cost me everything. Not the money, my mind, my body, my name. And I will tell you what it was, but only after you've earned it by listening to the whole truth. You think your family loves you. Good. I'm not here to tell you they don't. I'm here to tell you that love and entitlement share the same bed, and most of you can't tell which one is sleeping next to you until it's already stolen the sheets. I built my wealth with hands that this country told me were only good for cleaning other people's floors. I started with nothing, less than nothing. I started with a negative balance, black, female, born in the South when the South still thought we were furniture. Every dollar I earned had to fight through a wall of white gatekeepers, redlining, denial letters, and bankers who looked at me like I was lost. I didn't accumulate wealth. I conquered it. And after 60 years of war, I made the mistake of thinking the battle was over just because the enemy changed its face. The enemy stopped being the system. The enemy became my own blood. Let me take you to a car dealership. Nothing fancy about the story, nothing cinematic. Just an old woman sitting in a leather chair, looking at a car she wanted, not needed, wanted. A car with seats that wouldn't murder my spine every morning, with technology that could help me drive safely for another 5 years, maybe 10. I had the money, I had the desire, I had every right, and then my phone rang. Marcus, my son, 58 years old, a man I raised, fed, clothed, educated, bailed out of 2 failed businesses, and set up in a house he still hasn't fully paid for. He called me in a panic, not because I was sick, not because something happened to the grandchildren. He called because the bank notified him that a large withdrawal was being processed. He had alerts set up on my account, on my money, like I was his teenager sneaking out to a party. He told me the market was unstable. He told me we needed to preserve liquidity. We, as if there was ever a we when it came to earning that money. As if he'd spent one single sleepless night building what I built. He used words like family asset and fiduciary responsibility and long-term planning. And I sat there in that dealership chair, and I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. I felt small. I felt like I was asking permission to exist in my own life. And that feeling, that shrinking, that is the thing that kills us. Not the cancer, not the heart disease, the shrinking. They shrink you until you fit inside a box, and then they act surprised when you stop breathing. I didn't buy the car that day. I hung up, I smiled politely at the salesman, and I drove my old sedan home. But something had cracked open inside me. Not broken, cracked open, like a seed that's been underground too long. And for the next 48 hours, I sat in my house and I traced every thread of the web that had been built around me while I was busy being a good mother. Here is what I found, and I need you to pay attention because this is happening to you or to someone you love right now. Marcus didn't just have access to my account for convenience. He had built his entire financial identity on the back of my money. His credit lines, his business loans, his mortgage qualification, all of it rested on the proof of funds sitting in that joint account. My money wasn't his inheritance. It was his operating capital. He was running his life on my balance sheet while telling me to eat less, travel less, spend less. Every time I bought something for myself, it wasn't just an expense to him. It was a threat to his creditworthiness. I was being rationed by my own child so he could maintain an illusion of wealth that he never built. And his wife, Cynthia, that woman who smiles at me with those porcelain teeth while calculating the cost of every breath I take. She was the architect. She was the one feeding Marcus spreadsheets about nursing home costs and inflation projections and long-term care expenses, always framing it as concern, always wrapping the blade in silk. Every conversation she had with me about simplifying my lifestyle was a negotiation. She wasn't trying to help me age gracefully. She was trying to reduce my overhead so there'd be more left for her children when I finally had the decency to die. But before I tell you what I did about it, you need to understand the lie that made all of this possible. Because this isn't just about Marcus. This isn't just about one greedy son and his calculating wife. This is about a system, a machine, a set of rules written by people who decided that once you reach a certain age, your money stops being yours and starts being a public trust for the next generation. The banks make it easy. They encourage joint accounts for elderly clients. They frame it as protection, as estate planning, as making things smoother for when the time comes. What they don't tell you is that the moment another name sits on your account, your sovereignty is split. You become a co-owner of your own life. And for people who look like me, who fought through a system that never wanted us to have a dime, this is the final robbery. The first robbery was slavery. The second was Jim Crow. The third was redlining. And the fourth, the one nobody talks about, is the one your own family commits when they convince you that your money is safer in their hands. They call it love. I call it colonization with a familiar face. Day 3. I sat my son down at my dining room table, the same table where I used to help him with his homework, the same table where I told him his father had died, and I told him I was separating the accounts. I said it plain, no drama, no negotiation, just fact. And you know what happened? The mask slipped. Not all the way. Marcus is too polished for that, but enough. He didn't yell. He did something worse. He got concerned. That performative concern that people weaponize when they want to control you without looking like the villain. He asked if someone had been talking to me. He asked if I'd been approached by anyone, as if the only explanation for a black black woman wanting control of her own wealth was that she'd been manipulated by an outsider. Cynthia sat next to him, nodding like a metronome, adding phrases like, "We just want what's best for you," and "This seems sudden," and "Maybe we should talk to someone." Someone. They meant a doctor. They were already laying the groundwork. If you think what I'm describing is extreme, you're the exact person who needs to hear this the most. Because you've been trained to believe that family conflict is always a two-sided story, that there's always a reasonable middle ground. There is no middle ground when someone is standing on your neck. There is only up or down. Day 5. A man showed up at my door. Dr. Aris Thorne, a geriatrician, introduced by Marcus, of course. He came for a routine conversation about my recent decisions. He had a clipboard. He had a calm voice. He had the kind of smile that says, "I'm here to help," while his pen is ready to write the words that will cage you. He asked me about my sleep patterns. He asked me about my appetite. He asked me if I'd been feeling impulsive lately. Impulsive. An 80-year-old black woman who built a fortune from the dirt, who has managed her own investments for 4 decades, who has survived more financial cycles than this man has lived through. And he's asking me if I'm impulsive. I knew exactly what was happening. They were building a case, not a legal one, not yet, a clinical one, a narrative. Old woman, sudden financial decisions, possible cognitive decline, needs supervised care. That's the playbook. That's how they do it. They don't take your money with a gun. They take it with a diagnosis. They take it with a clipboard and a concerned son and a doctor who gets paid to agree. And the system backs them every step of the way because the system was never designed to protect the autonomy of an aging black woman. It was designed to transfer her assets efficiently to the next generation of consumers. I looked Dr. Thorne in the eye, and I told him that the only impulsive decision I'd ever made was letting my son's name anywhere near my accounts. Then I asked him to leave. He left, and I began to move. If you're still watching this, and you recognize yourself in any part of this story, if you've ever felt monitored, questioned, patronized, shrunk, type strength in the comments right now. Not for me, for yourself. Because acknowledging the cage is the first step to dismantling it. Day 7. I did not warn Marcus. I did not negotiate. I did not ask for a family meeting or a mediator or a therapist. I called my attorney, a woman I chose myself, who answers to me and only to me, and we walked into that bank together. I dissolved the joint account. I removed Marcus's name from every fund, every trust, every document that connected his financial life to mine. Then I did something that Marcus never anticipated. I moved the capital offshore, not to hide it, to protect it. I created a private family trust with one beneficiary, me, one authority of distribution, me, one directive, that no medical professional, no family member, no court-appointed guardian could access or redirect those funds without an independent audit by a legal team that I selected and that I pay. I didn't just move money. I moved the center of gravity. I made myself unreachable, and I did it all in 4 hours. When Marcus found out, and he found out fast, because the alerts he'd set up on my account suddenly went silent, which is its own kind of alarm. He called me 11 times. I answered on the 12th. He was shaking, not with anger, with fear, because without my money sitting under his name, his credit lines collapsed. His mortgage review was coming up. His business loan required proof of assets he no longer had access to. The empire he'd built out of paper and my name was falling. And for the first time in 15 years, he spoke to me not as a manager, not as a gatekeeper, but as a son, a scared, exposed son who had confused proximity to power with power itself. I told him one thing. I said, if you want to be in my life, come as my child. Come with empty hands and a full heart. But if you come as my accountant, if you come as my warden, if you come with spreadsheets and doctors and concerned looks, you will find a door that no longer opens. I am not your portfolio. I am not your credit line. I am not your inheritance strategy. I am a woman who built something out of nothing while the world tried to keep me on my knees. And I will spend every last dollar on myself if I choose to. And I will do it without apology, without permission, and without guilt. Your job is not to manage me. Your job is to outlive the lessons I've given you. Now let me tell you the mistake, the one I promised at the beginning, the master secret that nearly destroyed me. It wasn't the joint account. It wasn't trusting Marcus. It was believing that generosity would be interpreted as generosity. I gave freely because I loved freely, and I assumed that the people receiving my gifts understood that those gifts were acts of love, not contracts. But every dollar I gave trained the people around me to see me as a source, not a person. Every time I paid for a vacation, covered a bill, funded a business, I wasn't building love. I was building dependency. And dependency doesn't produce gratitude. It produces resentment. Because the person who depends on you doesn't see your generosity. They see their own powerlessness reflected in your ability to give. And they will punish you for it. They will punish you by controlling you, by monitoring you, by diagnosing you, by shrinking you until you're small enough to manage. My mistake was thinking that my open hand would be met with an open heart. Instead, it was met with an open ledger. So hear me now, because I've earned the right to say this. Your money is not a family resource. Your money is the last wall between you and a world that has spent your entire life trying to make you smaller. Do not let anyone, not a son, not a daughter, not a spouse, not a doctor, not a banker, sit on the other side of that wall. Guard it, fortify it, use it, spend it on yourself without shame. Buy the car, take the trip, hire the team that answers only to you. And if anyone tells you that protecting your wealth is selfish, ask them why they feel so entitled to it in the first place. I am 80 years old. I have walked through fire built by this country, by this system, by the very people who were supposed to shelter me. And I am still here. Not because I was strong, though I am. Not because I was smart, though I am. But because I finally understood that freedom isn't given, it's taken. And the last freedom I had left to take was from the people sitting at my own table. Now tell me, what day did you stop asking permission to live? Or are you still waiting for someone to hand you the keys to your own house? Comment below. And if you can't answer that question, then you know exactly what you need to do next. And you know that nobody is going to do it for you.